I can patch the two together. Um, Basically we're like I did have to say things, and it was it was like via email, but it was always me having to go to somebody else and being like, this situation happened and here's the proof, because um if it wasn't in this person's favor, then it was made to look like it wasn't their mistake. Does that make sense? Like, or that it was a happy accident, or that it was my fault. Like, those are the sort of things that would happen. But then I was always being the one who was like, no, actually, this is the case. And I've seen that happen over and over again in a toxic work environment when they're really coming after that one person. Not to say that I'm the only honest person there, but where they're really trying to find a reason to like dig deeper and get rid of you because you are a threat to their system or
Yeah.
to their inauthentic way.
Your integrity is a threat.
Right. And they,
There's
I
a
mean,
lot of
it's
organizations
been,
out there that are like that.
yeah.
Just do
And
what
it,
we say, don't pay attention to the laws or the ethics we're breaking. It's just do what we say. Money is the bottom line. And when you've got authentic people who don't care about money,
yeah.
there's a show called Goliath that Billy Bob Thornton plays this defense attorney who like is a washed, he's a great attorney, but he's like a washed up alcoholic. And
Hmm.
he just doesn't care about money. And so he just always goes after the bottom line truth. And you can't fight the truth. No
Right.
amount of money can fight the truth. If you don't care about money and you can't be bought, the truth will be exposed. I mean, look at Elon Musk right now. Like him and Donald Trump don't give a crap about money.
Hmm.
They're just exposing everybody and everything, and people are pissed off about it. Well, yeah, you should be scared. The truth is scary, but the
Yeah.
truth also sets you free. So it's both sides. You have to look
Hmm.
at both sides of the coin. Like,
Excuse me.
but sorry
No,
to
agreed.
you.
And I think that that's the thing too. But when people make a pattern of lying their entire lives, like, and I've seen it, it's for me, it's really easy to tell genuine versus maybe not easy is the word I should say, but after so long of working with or collaborating with somebody, like if it's one of those things where like I don't know, it's like what you said, like when you grow up with it, you recognize like how people are trying to cover their own butts, or
Mhm.
um they're lighting the other person on fire to like at least take the spotlight off them. And like the moment that I see that starting to happen, that's when I'm like, okay, I'm gonna pull back a little bit here because, if that's probably not an isolated incident. And that probably means that you have reached a high ranking level through some dishonest means. Like if you're able to do it just that smoothly and that suavely, you've had some practice at this. Uh,
Yeah.
and I think that is something that, as a Christian person too, God has, I think, with narcissism in my past, like knowing some narcissistic people, like being able to see those red flags is important too, but not to say that I'm always right. But like I think, he gives us almost like a pattern to follow, um, and to know like what it is that we are facing. And he gives you that conviction in your heart of um whether you're in like a safe environment or if you're walking into something that needs prayer, and like pray over this building, pray over the people in this meeting, um, and pray for your own, like to just not say anything, like if that's what it comes down to, or to speak the truth. And that has been maybe one of the biggest lessons I think through working in this one area. And this has been I've been there for a very long time, but learning how to step into that, and they can't derail something that is fact. And
Hmm.
I do remember like specifically there was one incident where I don't know if I told you about this, but this was like year 4. So I had I had invited some coworkers to come with me on a study abroad trip. And that following year, like it went fine, but that following year, they kind of one person split off from me and tried to like start their own program, which okay, that's fine. Like that you're within your rights. But then it became almost like a on their end a competition, like trying to like pull um people away from my own. And I just had to sit there and be like, God, if it's meant to run, it'll run. I'm not going to get into a competition with this person. And then there was another somehow, some
I
way.
aspire to be like that. Because I'd have been, Lord, you better fix this because I'm about to just jump down this girl's throat. Like I'd be the fighter. I am not
Not
a
to say I
fighter.
didn't want to, but
Yeah, like,
but it was also like there were aspects of like I can't diagnose anybody, aspects of covert narcissism because I would notice like when I would initially like there were a couple of times where I may have like also advertised alongside thinking like, okay, well, if she can put up her ad, I can too, and then they can know about both. And then it became like the next poster up was like apply now for, it was bigger and better, that kind of thing. And I was like, oh, I don't want to get into this. Like that's not
mm,
gonna be me. Um, but then there was on some level a rumor that was started, and I'm not even sure what exactly was said, but somehow my program got labeled as being um, like a threat to the diversity course that was offered through the college. Okay. And it got real twisted, and there was like a whole lunch discussion about it and meeting. And like when it came back to me, what whatever it started out as, it got into this big snowball, and it turned out they were talking about two different courses anyways. So case in point was that when I laid it out for those people who were trying to attack me, and I was like, you're talking about two different courses. You're saying that mine has a credit that my students go on this trip, they receive a credit for this one course. And the course they were actually talking about was not even in our program, but everybody has to take a diversity class in our building, right?
mm,
But early childhood has its own specific one. And I said, what you're coming after me for is something I've never even taught. Like, I have never taught that particular course code number because I'm an early childhood professor, not a middle childhood or AYA. And I said, you have the wrong class, first of all. And like the silence that followed after that, and there were certain individuals who looked really, really mad because not that I was trying to compete at all, I wasn't, but just that they had lost the argument and they were mad. Like that was the only foot they had to stand on.
mm,
And the next day, even running into um, somebody who had kind of been spearheading this whole entire thing, passing her in the hallway looking deflated. And I was like, well, like when you're trying to derail something that is true, like if you are standing in truth, it's not going to happen. Like that's why being authentic is so important. And that's why um making sure that you are stepping up in that moment and being like, hold up, like that is absolutely not the case. Or no, these are the facts right here. Um, and that says something about it also will put to rest a lot of those thoughts of who they are telling you are as a person or telling other people that you are.
yeah,
And it sets that case on the right foot. It sets that case into, no, this is the actual truth. You don't have to like it because it's not what you spun. And it actually makes you look bad now. But like that's the whole point is why are we trying to make somebody into this big monster when we know that's not the case? Like we just want it to look good in our favor, and we want it to be our position so that we can move up in the rank or whatever it might be,
yeah,
uh, and have more friends or have more popularity. And like that to me has just been that environment has taught me that over and over again. And I think we were talking about this weekend where I just was like, I would rather be disliked by most of the population and have a small group of people who um like I feel like even if I'm on the outside of things, like even if it's just that small circle and we are unified in that idea, like that's what matters more to me is that I'm speaking truth and that I'm living truth. Even if the population doesn't want to see it or hear it, like sorry, like stepping into who you're supposed to be is much more important.
Yeah, your integrity, I think she talks about.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's, we're all guilty of it, like being the person on the wrong end of things where you're like, oh crap, the truth did come out. And so I think a huge part of our integrity and our authenticity is being able to say, you know what, I think I messed up. You're right. That came across the wrong way, or I shouldn't have done that. And this is how I should respond to this. And this is what I'm hoping for. So how can we collaborate and work together on this
Mhm.
instead of, being against you? But pride is, I mean, that's I think the whole world's battle is you're constantly battling your pride, your ego. And are you willing to say, you know what, I was wrong. I apologize for that. And
Yeah, and you know what? I think that there's a lot of growth and healing that comes from that too, like being able to have humbleness in a situation and like call out your own like mistakes. You know, that takes more courage than, at least for me, that has been over time, like learning how to coming from a household that never really took accountability for themselves. Like we had to come up with our own narrative as to why people treat us the way we did.
Mhm.
And then me knowing that if I admitted my mistakes, like what you were saying with like the abuse, like mine might not have been physical, but it would have been emotional for sure. Like I would have been verbally reprimanded or shamed for having an opinion, or if I admitted fault. I actually think I got to a point at one point in my teens where I made a almost like a point to my abusers to like be hard on myself so that they would not also be hard on me. And then they would be like, oh, well, she's coming down on herself pretty hard. So I think we'll just let this one slide. And that's how I learned to be safe. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And like, I think,
And I think she talks about that in here, like the examples of like, I don't know if you would call it like the exception to the rule. We can't speak truth to bullshit, but like it's also, you know, doing it in a way that is inclusive of others. And um, I don't know, she talks about the inclusive language. And I mean, this might be just, you know, it's what's tough about the inclusive language movement is when people turn using the right language into a weapon to shame or belittle people.
mhm,
Um, the need to be right is magnified when we feel we're in hostile territory and under attack. A culture example of this is political correctness. The history of this concept is as wild and unruly as the conversations about it have become. At this point, the term is so loaded that I think it makes more sense to talk about inclusive language. Given what we know about dehumanizing, I believe inclusive language is critically important, absolutely worth the effort, and a function of civility. We often take sides when it comes to the big political debates and issues like sports teams and ignore the everyday instances that are equally diminishing. For example, let's say you've been diagnosed with anxiety and your child has attention deficit disorder. How would you feel if you overheard your doctor saying, yeah, I've got my anxiety disorder coming at 2 p.m. and I'm going to see the ADD kid before I go home? Proponents of inclusive language would say you're not your diagnosis. You're a person with anxiety. It matters to all of us. No one wants to be reduced. And I think that we have to take that into consideration from the flip side too, where it's like, I want to be called this. And it's like, but what if that's not true? How do I be respectful and loving to somebody who's deceived? Um, but they don't think they're deceived. And so I'm told that I have to just use that language because it makes them more comfortable when me using that language makes me real uncomfortable.
mhm,
So where's the balance? And so it's like, for me, it comes down to, well, you have a choice to be offended. Like, I
mhm,
remember being in a CEU training with a bunch of other clinicians, and it was Thanksgiving. I think so it was Friday, so it was the day after Thanksgiving. And so she was like, we're going to break out in small groups, and in your group, maybe just talk about, get to know each other and maybe talk about like family traditions you might have for Thanksgiving. And so when we broke out into our groups, one of the ladies in my group was like, I think she made a mistake there when she assumed that everybody celebrates Thanksgiving.
Mhm.
And then she said, I'm Jewish, and it's, offensive when people say Merry Christmas to me. They don't ask me if I'm Jewish or not. And I'm like, right, but you also have the choice to be offended by that. Like, if somebody who's Jewish is saying, Happy Hanukkah, I'm going to respond back with, well, Merry Christmas. Like, that's, aloha, shalom type of like, why are you offended that I'm celebrating what I celebrate and sharing that when you're like, well, I don't celebrate that, so you're not allowed to say that to me? And it's like, well, how do I, like, you just want me to walk on eggshells around you all day long? Why wouldn't you just say Happy Hanukkah? And I'd be like, oh, I didn't realize that you were Jewish. Like, let's talk about that. Tell me about that.
Yeah,
That brings connection and conversation. But when you're just like, I don't believe in that. So how dare you say that to me? It's like, oh, well, I do believe in it. So how dare you tell me I can't talk about the thing that I celebrate?
yeah,
Why can't you use that same judgment from your own perspective? And to me, that's where the hypocrisy comes in. Like,
mhm,
you can't do it, but I can.
right,
You can't be offended by this, but I can. And it's just like, come on, like you're
right,
doing the exact thing that you're projecting onto everybody else who thinks and does things differently. So, like, if that's the case, then nobody should be allowed to ever celebrate anything out loud.
yeah, yeah,
And
and
that's not reality.
right,
Like, there's no logic or reasoning behind that. Like, that's just your emotional state. And that's what she talks about. Like, I can't speak truth to bullshit because of your feelings.
right,
And yes, you take people's feelings into consideration. That's a part of it. I don't want to come across and, purposely like say, oh, well, that's a crappy religion and you shouldn't be that way. You should be this way. Like, yeah, that's now going to the flip side on the other, to the extreme. But it's like, why are you offended by that? Like, that's the question. Ask yourself, like, why do I get so upset about this? Why
yeah,
am I offended?
yeah,
It's
and
like,
what's driving the emotion, what's driving the behavior, like,
mm-hmm.
and I think I recently walked through a situation like that too, where I was just like, where is this coming from? Like, literally, like, this is, and it's a person that I had thought I had left behind like years and years and years ago. And it's just one of those things where you have to, and that's, I feel like that's where God points out to you, you have a little bit more work to do in this area. Like, this is something that you need to be aware of, take accountability for, and fix.
And I keep putting you in situations to help you grow through this, and you just keep dropping the ball. So
Right.
let's just keep doing
Yeah.
this.
Let's like pick up the ball and dribble it a couple times,
Yeah.
and that's the literal truth, because and that's, you know, instead of learning how to handle that situation in the moment, which would be the healthy response. Um, I know that, like, only from personal experience, that, as a teenager, I would actively find ways to avoid handling that situation, you know, and that's what I always say. I'm a recovering people pleaser. That's something that, like, I learned safety through telling people what they wanted to hear. But did I enjoy doing that? No, because I think that I was going against the most authentic part of myself, which is that integrity piece that we were just talking about. Like, I want to do right by my author. I want to do right by other people, but
Hmm.
I don't want to light myself on fire in order for that to happen. Like, that is
It's
not worth it to me. Yeah. Yeah, like,
I
to
do.
keep them warm. And I have been down that road. I have done that, and I have seen where it's led, and I want nothing to do with it. And it's like, and there are still things that, like, haunt me from it, and because it crashes and burns so badly. It really does. And I have also learned that by just, like, stepping into that truth and being like, you know what? I know that my voice is going to shake and my whole body's probably going to uh, shimmy with fear or whatever it is, but and I might cry my whole way through it, but I'm gonna, like, no, we're gonna talk about this. This is not okay. Like, and I know that there's a better way to do it. There's a method, but at the end of that, like there is a resolution and there is a respect, and that is something that can only come from people listening to each other and having open conversations and having respectful conversations. And that has gotten me so much further in life than avoiding the situation and not speaking up ever has. And I think
Mm.
that, and like, not to say I'm perfect. I know that those patterns come back, but like, I've also seen how, and I tell my students this too, like, if you're not going to practice being the teacher who you want to be, your students are, because they're always looking to you, they're going to model after what they see or don't see. They're
Mhm.
not going to be comfortable being confident um, and outspoken and honest people, and whatever your values are as a teacher, like they're going to mirror whatever you're bringing into the classroom. So if your classroom's in chaos, it's because you're in chaos. And
Mhm.
um, that's
My
something that,
pastor talked about that in church today.
hmm hmm yep. And that's, you reap what you sow. And I think like, um, and when the world is in chaos, and that's something else he had said too, like, but your core value is um, focusing on peace and focusing on those resolution, those skills that that in this moment, like I have
That
a choice to tap
is
into.
that what he said? You're not at peace. The only time I see people who aren't at peace are when people have their lives are in chaos. And you can't have a life full of chaos and be in peace at the same time.
Right.
I mean, that's when you're trying to control things that are outside of your control. That's what chaos is.
That's
Like,
what it feels. Yeah. And then you start to feel chaotic on the
mhm,
inside of your mind. And I think, um, I know I've been in environments or situations where I feel like life has been really heavy lately. Like there's a lot of things happening, but I feel steady. And that's the difference because, like, I know, excuse me, I have the hiccups. I know, like, I just can't talk without burping. I know that I have, a foundation that I rely on. I know what my value systems are. And I know, like, at the end of the day, that I'm, not responsible for what everybody else thinks, but I am responsible to them. But, that's that we're going to have days where people disagree. You're going to have differences of opinion. You're going to have a lot of things happening, but you don't have to um, force your hand to control it all. Like that's
yeah,
recognizing what is within your personal control is critical in order for you to be that person who even speaks confidence in that situation. So like I don't know if this is an ADHD trait or not. You could tell me, but there's a system when like whenever things are truly stressful or confusing or whatever, and like for example, when I take groups to Belize, if someone is comes down with an illness or one time we left somebody behind at the preschool because it was across the street and everybody got in the van and we were like 10 minutes down the road and she was like, "Hey, where are you guys?" And she texted us and we were like, "Hmm, I could so easily freak out right now, but I'm like, okay, George." He said, yes. I said, we need to turn around because we're missing somebody, and like everyone else is in the van. They're like, oh my gosh, is she okay? Like, she's left alone in Belize. I'm like, we're 10 minutes out. She's going to be all right. I just said, just stay right there. Like, we're coming back for you. And it turned out okay. But like, had I lost my head in that situation, everybody would have followed. Like, it's just lemmings, even if it wasn't just it doesn't have to be just students. It's just people who are looking to that other person for that reaction. That is contagious, and that is something that they're looking to you for. How is this person going to respond? And then it's wildfire. It catches on, but you have a choice in how to handle those situations.
yeah. Oh man, it's getting late.
I
All
know.
right. So one of the things that I wanted to touch on was she uses the acronym BRAVING. Speaking truth to bullshit and practicing civility starts with knowing ourselves and knowing the behaviors and issues that both push into our own BS or get in the way of being civil. If we go back to braving and our true our trust checklist. These situations require a keen eye on number one. So the braving acronym B is for boundaries.
Mhm.
What's okay in a discussion and what's not? How do you set a boundary when you realize you're knee deep in BS? Um, Two is reliability, BR, reliability. Bullshitting is the abandonment of reliability. It's hard to trust or be trusted when we BS too often. So to me, the reliability aspect or this BS she's talking about is like when people sugarcoat things. I am not a big sugarcoater. I don't want people to sugarcoat things. I don't want you to tell me what you think I want to hear. I want you to be honest. I want you to tell me the truth. And then I have to deal with that. I get the choice, the autonomy to respond in a way that